present and correct. So what do I do? Here you go.
Yep, you want to screenshot. You want to go start straight away. Yep.
Oh, no, we're
Yep.
still waiting for
No.
people to join. All right.
Oh, hang on, there's no screen share. Sorry. Sorry, people. We will be just starting straight into the slideshow. There you go.
Well, good morning, everybody. I think we've said good morning already, but that's okay. Water birds. And these, of course, are all birds of our region, northwest Tasmania. And water birds are a very broad, it's a broad description of birds that aren't perching birds, non-passerines, if you like. So without further ado, we'll press on.
Yep.
What am I doing, Doug?
I don't think you'll have to go onto, click onto there.
With this? I can't reach that. Oh, that's going to be hard. Now.
It's decided not to work. Just
sorry, guys.
Sorry, people.
My technician will have to sort this one out. All right. We talked a bit about...
just tell me and I'll do it.
Oh, okay. We talked last week a bit about birds' feet being one of the defining features about whether things are passerines or non-passerines. And there's your passerines at the top, as we described last week, and then you've got the 2 toes forward and 2 back, which are the cockatoos and cuckoos. But right at the bottom, some of the birds we're going to talk about today. And as you can see there, there's lobed foot of a grebe on the left, and in the middle is a normal duck, goose, or swan's foot with 3 toes webbed, and then there's the 4 webbed toes, like the pelicans, cormorants, gannets. They're all related. Righto. That's just a collective group of random water birds. Go to the next one, Dale. Right, we'll start with a very common bird that you're all familiar with. In fact, we had a description this morning of a standoff between an aristocrat and one of these, the white-faced heron. What can I say? A non-migrant, generally resident, nests high in trees, not necessarily near water. Has anyone ever seen a nest of one of these?
No.
No, if it's such a common bird, their nests are hard to find. I have on the mainland found them and climbed up to them. They're often 50 or 60 feet up in a tree.
Oh, gee whiz,
Not necessarily near water, but of course, a bird that can fly as well as these, to fly a couple of kilometres to the nearest swamp to feed isn't really a problem.
So, Cole, when you say that they're non-migrants, you mean they live in Tasmania the entire life?
In the mainland, they're basically Australia-wide, that species.
Yeah. And do they go from one part of the Tasmanian one? Do they live, say, in the mountains sometimes and closer to the...
Maybe a little bit nomadic, but Tassie has the advantage climatically of being pretty stable. So there's generally, where there's water, there's always water in Tassie compared to the mainland. On the mainland, they have to get around more because their habitat totally dries out for years at a time. So naturally, they have to shift camp. But here, they tend to be resident. Yeah. Okay. This is its close relation, the white-necked heron. You occasionally see them here. They don't breed here, but they do show up from time to time. Has anyone seen one of those? They're quite magnificent.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Again.
Whereabouts?
Some Remain.
Remain?
Yeah, it's on the lake.
Oh, okay.
Where's Renee?
Near Upper Burnie.
Okay, well done.
Yeah.
I've seen them up in the Mallee, up near Mildura.
You would, yeah. Quite common on the mainland, but very scarce in Tassie.
And the white-faced heron I've seen on the farm dam in the middle of the Mallee, 150 miles from the River Murray, a long way from sort of big expanses of water.
That'd be right. Yeah, well, they're very good flyers, and they can soar very high, and obviously see a long way. And yeah, they seem to know how to find water on the mainland.
Yeah.
Okay. Cattle egrets. There's an interesting story about these. They weren't recorded in Australia at all prior to about 1900 or the early 1900s, and then a few showed up and disappeared again, and eventually they self-introduced from Southeast Asia. We believe once there were enough cattle and enough land cleared in northern Australia, they were able to establish. And since then, they've shifted by themselves to New Zealand and Tasmania. And as far as we know, they don't breed here. And speaking of breeding, that picture on the left with the fluffy plumes, that's the breeding plumes, which you see on them here in Tassie. I've seen them at the back of Wynyard coloured up like that in a big mob, but they don't appear to be breeding. Or, well, you tell me, does anybody know, have they ever found a colony of these? Because they nest in loose colonies.
When you drive out Stennings Road, Cole, in the middle paddock, one back from the highway, we get them every year in great numbers with the cows, and they're all over the paddock. But in no other paddocks, they seem to just go to that one paddock where the cows are, and they're there every year in great numbers.
Cool. Well, they rely on cattle to disturb the insects which they feed on.
Yeah.
So you'll sometimes even see them riding on a cow's back.
Yes, yeah, you do.
And so those two pictures, the left picture is the birds are in breeding plumage, the right-hand picture is how you normally see them. They're just plain white.
Cole,
Yes.
that's not the same as a sulphur-crested egret, is it?
There is no sulphur-crested egret. That's a cockatoo.
No.
Believe me, Mel, there's no sulphur-crested egret.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you've got your wires crossed somewhere there.
So there's no other egret with a yellow top like that.
No, there are other egrets, but not with a yellow top. No.
And the yellow top's only when they're breeding?
Yes, only at the breeding time. And as I said before, they put on those yellow plumes here, but they don't appear to breed in Tasmania. Yes, yes, but they've only established themselves here since the 40s, 50s.
Yes, somebody.
Yeah, somebody else.
Maureen, when we went to Robo Cow place, there were a good 100 plus in the paddock.
There were. That's right.
Photos of those.
Yes. So they're quite common here now in winter. They come down here when the soil's soft, and they can probe in the soil for worms and invertebrates and follow the cattle around. Yeah. Okay, I'll keep rolling here, or we might run out of time again. On the left here, we've got the intermediate egret, and it's called intermediate because it's basically in size. It's between a little egret and a great egret. Can you believe? And on the right is the more common great egret. In fact, there's often a great egret in Camp Creek, as you can see from the bridge when you drive along the Old Bass Highway. Tricky to identify, tricky to pick apart. The great egret has a longer neck in proportion to its body than the intermediate. The intermediate's very scarce in Tassie, and as you can see there, it has a more domed head. There are subtle differences. Their beaks also change colour in the breeding season, which throws another spanner in the works. But anyway, if you see anything that you think slightly different, again, send me a photo. I'd love it.
Somebody at the door? I think so, yeah. It's okay.
That's the little egret. And that's a scarce bird in Tassie too, but I have seen them. It's not only an inhabitor of freshwater swamps, but it will inhabit estuarine areas too. I've seen it on the sand flats down in the Robbins Island Passage in northwest Tasmania.
G'day, Trent. How you doing? They're walking.
Whoever has a, please mute themselves. Right.
Yeah.
Are they the same size as the cattle egret? Or are they bigger?
Yeah, just go back down, can you please? They're leggier, they're scrawnier than a cattle egret. A cattle egret has a very short neck by egret standards for its size, whereas the little egret is a more gangly bird. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And slightly different posture too. If
Yeah. The little egret is a more horizontal, stands more horizontally. Cattle egret is quite upright. I guess that's an adaptation for its habitat. It lives in long grass, whereas the little egret looks for invertebrates in the water. So it's more horizontal, if you like, for want of a better word.
And the little one seems to have a longer, blacker beak than the others.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. They're the little things you look for. They're the little subtle differences that you have to try and clock if you're going to try and identify them. Hard to pick at a distance, though. But again, you won't see a little egret walking around with cattle in a cow paddock as a rule. It'll be in a swamp or an estuary. So if you can have a look at its habitat, that gives you a clue. Okay. Next one. This is a great bird. Now, this photo was taken right here in Camp Creek in Wynyard by Mike Highland, the night heron. Now, when it's perched, roosting through the day, most of the time it doesn't look like that. It has its neck tucked in, basically showing no neck. But its colour is totally distinctive. It's a rufous colour with a very large eye because it's a nocturnal bird.
Colin, whereabouts in Camp Creek? I might go looking.
Yeah, well, they weren't there last time I looked, but you never know. They're usually there at this time of year. If you go to the first street off the street parallel on the eastern side, go down the eastern side of Camp Creek, and just where the first road turns off to the east, there's a patch of scratchy looking. Have a look at that tree that's sitting in with those sort of leaves. Semi-deciduous tree that's losing its leaves at the moment. Just scratchy looking trees. They don't look very inviting, but that's where they roost.
Okay.
And there's sometimes 3 or 4 there.
Hey, I'm onto it.
And can you see the white plume down from? They have 2 white plumes, but you don't always see those in the wild.
And as Cole says, the thing that you'll see when you're looking for them is their eye.
Great big eye, yeah.
They'll be watching you like you're...
They'll see you long before you see them.
So Cole, just explain to me the eastern side of Camp Creek. How do you exit? What street is it you?
I think is it Martin Street or something that turns off and runs up the side of Camp Creek, and it's just in there, 100 metres in there. You know where all the ducks and everything are?
Yep.
It's the next bunch of trees just. Keep going up further up Camp Creek.
Yeah, it's upstream from where they feed the ducks.
So it's literally 100 metres from the bridge.
Right. Yep.
Beautiful. We're onto it, Joe.
And when you go, just try not to disturb them. They will take flight. Best they're trying to rest. They've been working all night. So just be aware, keep your distance. Take your binoculars so you can see through the foliage properly.
Yeah, don't frighten them off.
No, I won't. I promise I won't.
Good. All right. Everyone knows this character. These are very interesting, very common birds. In fact, one of their strongholds is Tasmania. They're much more common here than on the mainland, but they're basically Australia-wide in one form or another. Used to be called the spur-winged plover. I still think they should be called spur-winged plovers, to be honest. You see the spurs on their shoulders. But I don't think they need much explanation. They annoy everybody. If you're trying to sneak up on a rabbit, they start screaming, and of course, any game that you're looking for is gone. That's their job.
I call them the kamikaze pilots because they run right in front of our car when they up Stennings Road. They have their babies in the water on the side in the ditch, and then they run out to protect the young, but they go in front of your car.
Yeah, well, they totally feel it, totally bold. And they'll nest in the weirdest places. A few years ago when Reese was working at TAFE, they had young up on the big flat roof of one of the TAFE buildings, 2-story building. Yeah, 2-story building. And of course, when the young hatched, they couldn't get down. So Reese, in her usual style, raided the maintenance man's shed, got the ladder, all unannounced, put the ladder up, went up on the roof in bare feet, brought the baby plovers down in her bra, got sprung.
Not in my bra.
Oh, well, I thought that was fairly commodious. But anyway, look, down she came, and she got hauled over the coals for all this very unsafe practice, and didn't have permission to use it. But anyway, she didn't care because the plovers survived. So.
And another interesting story about the plovers is that when we were at Teabunna, the plovers nested on a little island that was only 15 metres from shore, and they had their 4 babies, which they had there for a couple of days on the island, and then they flew over to the mainland and called their babies, and the babies swam across the water. The 4th baby, the youngest one of all, cried piteously for his mother for some time, but eventually
had to jump in
and
swim.
Cole, is there any really good books about it? Because we've been watching for the last 3 years them nesting below the house, and then they teach the young to go across Falmouth Street, and watching them do that is like hell. You know, you take your heart and your head. But anyway, they should have a whole big book about them. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, you could make a really good story about that, couldn't you? They have a high mortality rate, but they're prolific breeders, and their modus operandi is to have plenty so that you can lose a few and still the species survive.
And have three or 4 sittings of babies. When they lose the first lot, they'll do it again.
That's right.
Some of them bred here in Somerset, and the babies got down from the esplanade over to the gardens, but they couldn't get back up the gutter. So one of the neighbours had obviously made a little ramp so that they could climb up the grass.
That's cool.
That was when they were really tiny. So
that's cool.
Good ramp there.
Yeah. Another problem they have is that penguin fence, which is great because it keeps the penguins off the roads here, but baby oyster catchers, plovers or whatever can't get through that. So it's just another example of we're helping one species and hindering another. But anyway, that's beside the point. Here we are, another couple of relations to the plover, the spur-winged plover or marsh lapwing. On the left, we've got a little tiny black-fronted dotterel, very beautifully marked little bird, a ground nester, lives around freshwater, around farm dams and wetlands, and also around the highland lakes where there's bare ground. They only live where they have a good view around, very, very short grass. And the one on the right is a close relative of the spur-winged plover that we've just been talking about, the banded lapwing. Another feisty little bird. There's a colony of them at Moreland Point. They're also at Woolnorth. They're right. They live underneath the turbines there at the wind farm. And that red on its forehead is a wattle. That's a fleshy red thing. Lives on bare ground or very short grass. Okay. Latham snipe, another bird you might see if you're really, really patient or really, really lucky down at Camp Creek.
I think you asked about this last time, didn't you, Annette?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen it the once.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. It's very easy to not see them at all. Yeah. Migrates from Japan, breeds in Japan. Used to be called the Japanese snipe or Jap snipe. For some reason, they've changed it now to the Latham's snipe. But it's a regular summer visitor to Tasmania. Lives in a wide variety of habitats, but never too far from water. Very shy and retiring. Hard to observe on the ground. You usually only see it, hear it, and see it when it flies, when you flush it by accident. Okay. We all know this one.
Yeah.
The good old flightless native hen, one of the few flightless birds in Australia, other than emus and cassowaries and penguins, of course. Yeah, only have one kind of word in their vocab, and that's swear words. They just swear all the time. And you can see that on the picture on the left, there's one swearing at that grebe. The grebe had a nest on that dam, and the hen on the left is going crooked degree for having the temerity to approach it.
One thing I reckon is really interesting about the native hens is that their call is actually a duet. That's two birds. One goes eh, the other one goes eh. So
so you get that yeah, yeah.
Yes, I love
And they live in family groups. It's a matriarchal society. There's a dominant female that runs the show, and she has a heap of subordinate males and last year's young ones helping out, and that's what forms a troop.
And they are, I mean, I know they're as common as mud, but they're one of those wonderful birds. You'll see them where they've got little babies. They will carefully pick a single blade of grass and delicately feed it to their babies. It's really gorgeous.
It's quite touching. And yeah,
we've just had another hatching of them at home.
Have you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, this time of year. Wow, that's a bit.
Yes, I saw them the other day. They're about 4 little black fluffy chicks.
Oh, cool. That's pretty ambitious, isn't it? They've got to get through the winter, those poor little sods.
Yeah.
Anyway,
This
the
is
troops
the
are very.
turbo chook,
Sorry.
right?
Go on,
This is
Jan.
the turbo chook, right?
Yes.
Go on, Jan. Yeah. No.
Oh no, I was surprised to see them, but I'll keep an eye on them.
Yeah, good. I'm surprised that they've bred this time of year. The troops will fight to the death too. They have a very clearly in their own little brains demarcation of territory, and we have seen them in Somerset fight to the death.
Right.
They'll drown each other. They'll peck each other. They're really quite violent.
Cole, I wonder where they live, because we have them in the paddocks certainly on the southwestern side in family groups, and they scare easily and then they run. They seem to run into our land, but I've never found nests.
Yeah, we
saw a nest one time, Joe. Remember, you were showing me how you hadn't cleaned up the piles of pruning, and I looked out at a pile of pruning in a little ephemeral swamp you had, and there was a native hen's nest on the top, and I said, Joe, don't clean it up. Nature doesn't do tidy, mate.
That's right. I've forgotten that one.
I just thought I'd remind you, Joe.
You never forget to remind me, Cole.
Anyway, we better keep moving along or we're going to run out of time.
Good time.
Are we going good time? All right, purple swamp hen, bald coot, eastern swamp hen. They're all names that apply to this bird. Only lives around closer, more dependent on water than the native hen. But it's a grazer and a feeder on shoots and roots, water, aquatic plants.
And sometimes you can see them feeding, and they'll pull out an underwater root that's covered in mud and wash it. They'll hold it in their claw and wash it, and then delicately eat it. It's really quite amazing.
It is cool. They'll hold it in their claw in their foot like a parrot. Yeah.
I recently saw them moving their babies across one of our dams, and the mother, or one of them, the parent, was picking them up in their beak and moving them with
wow,
their beak, which I'd never seen before. And they're very close. I walk that way every day, if not twice a day. I've never seen it before.
No, that's cool, Jan. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So they swam across the dam with the chick in their beak.
Well, they were walking. We've got those rushes still down there, and they were walking with the chicks. The one chick, I only saw her do it once, in their beak, moving them.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, cool.
All right, two relatives of the native hen and swamp hen. Up on the top left, you've got the coot, the Eurasian coot, very common and much more aquatic than most of the swamp hen family. Don't have webbed feet, but they have lobed feet. Each toe between the joints has a flap of skin bulging out that they use to swim. I haven't got a picture of the foot of one of these. No, we haven't. It's only a grebe. Oh, it's a bit like the one on the left, the grebe there, but scalloped. The lobes are scalloped rather than straight-sided like the grebe.
Half webs.
Anyway. Reese knows how to drive this thing, thank Christ. All right, that's the coot. Very common. You see them absolutely everywhere, all over Tasmania. And then the moorhen down to the right, the one with the red and yellow beak, a very scarce bird in Tassie, very common on the mainland. We have seen them in Tassie, and we had a pair, looked like they were going to set up to breed on our dam when we lived in Somerset. But they were there for quite some time and then just disappeared. So has anyone got them on their farm dams?
No, no.
No?
We haven't.
No, it's a shame. I don't know why not, because the habitat here in Tassie is quite suitable for them. Okay. Now, I love these guys, but you've got to be a bit of a bird nerd to be interested in this group. These are related to the water hens. But they're tiny, about the size of a starling or a bit bigger. The one on the left, Lewin's water rail, is a very secretive but beautifully marked bird. In fact, we had one in our yard here in Wynyard last year that we saw a few times, and all you see, of course, is a puff of dust and its head down, arse up, running its life. You know, and you think, did I really see that? Great little bird though, with a very interesting vocabulary. They make all kinds of noises, from ticking to growling, grunting, screaming. They can do the lot. And I wasted a lot of my youth actually seeking out and finding the nests of these birds and so on, so I could observe them. And the one on the right is a spotless crake, a bit easier to observe than the Lewin's water rail, but still very secretive. And we had a pair, at least a pair in Somerset, breeding on islands in our dam. And the best place to see them, though, if you don't mind leaving home, is at the Tamar wetlands. You can actually sometimes see them from the observatory there, you know, the reception area. Has anyone ever seen them?
No.
No.
They're tiny. When you first see them, you think they're a blackbird. But you know, in the wrong place. But basically,
and wrong shape, yeah. Stumpy tail and long legs. They are just a miniature water hen, really. So yeah. Waddlers, ducks, and grebes. All right, we'll start with the. What was that?
Did someone ask a question? No.
Pacific black duck. Blackies, they're known as. Very much Australia-wide, New Guinea-wide. Somebody.
If you're asking a question, please yell out more. If you're not asking a question, maybe mute yourself because there's some distortion coming through.
Anyway, the good old Pacific black duck.
Keep talking.
Pacific black duck. Beautiful when you get them up close. The defining feature, the field mark, of course, is the eyeliner. Its Latin name is Anas superciliosa because of that very pronounced supercilium, or eyebrow, if you like. Yeah, look, they'll live anywhere, farm dams, swamps. Don't often see them on the sea, generally freshwater, very common, have lots of young, have about a 28-day incubation period, have a great heap of young ones, many of which don't make it to adulthood, but that seems to be their job, is to provide food for other things with their young. And they'll breed as many times a year as they've got food. So a very hardy species. But unfortunately, interbreeds with the introduced mallards. Here we are. This is the mallard that has been introduced onto public park ponds and stuff. And unfortunately, because they'll hybridise, around urban areas, we are losing our purebred black ducks, and we end up with hybrids of mallard and black duck.
In Burney Park and places like that, you rarely see the purebreds anymore. They're mostly all these crossbreds.
Hybrids, and there's some of them at Camp Creek too. And as you can see on the left there, the female mallard is not unlike our black duck, less of a supercilium and a little bit bigger bird, but it is a concern that the purebred black ducks in some areas are dying out. Wood ducks, you'd all know this one too. This is a bit of a success story, really. Mostly in the wild world, human activities buggered up species, but this is a species that's increased in range and numbers because of farming practices, because they're grazers and they like water. So we've made farm dams and paddocks. And on the left, you got the male, and on the right, the female. Very common. Nest in hollow trees, not necessarily near water. You can be blundering through the bush and hear the familiar sound that the female makes, and there they'll be perched up in a tree. Even though they're not passerines, they can perch and nest in hollow trees. But of course, we're getting rid of the hollow trees hand over fist. So nesting habitat will be a problem for them rather than food habitat.
And when the babies hatch, even at about 1 day old, they leap out of the tree and basically flail their way and thump to the ground, a newborn baby duck, and then they waddle off behind mum and dad to where the water is that they'll live. But it's incredible the way these tiny 1 day old ducklings can waft their way down to the ground without damaging themselves. They'll hit branches and bounce off and do all sorts.
But they're so light, yeah, and they flap madly, which doesn't really help because they're tiny little wings. They're only for show. But that's the case with a lot of our Australian ducks, is they are tree hollow nesters, and that's how they. For years, it wasn't understood how. There were all sorts of fanciful stories about how the parents got the young down to the ground, like carry them on their backs and all sorts of fanciful stuff. But really, they just leap and hope for the best. I guess occasionally someone gets injured, but generally, because they're so light, they land relatively unscathed.
Cole, Joe here, has any cunning predators worked out that if they stand under the tree, they've got to feed?
Not that I know of, but that wouldn't surprise me. But I haven't heard that that's a regular habit. But I know that crows watch the parents when they're leading their young for the first time to water. Crows will follow them and pick off the stragglers. In fact, we've seen that with shell ducks down at Rocky Cape. Shell ducks, and of course, the crows were getting the shell ducks because there's farm fences which, impede the progress of the chicks and gives the predators more time to actually catch them and eat them.
The parent ducks, the wood ducks, both parents look after the young, and they'll actually be quite protective and quite aggressive in their protection, and they're usually both ends, so one's leading and one's taking up the tail of the trail of ducklings, whereas black ducks, it's only the female. So that's why a lot more of those are picked off, because she can't look after the 19th duckling. She just can't look after.
And teal are the same. Teal, there's only one parent as a rule looks after them, and therefore they lose a lot. But they have a lot. They have big broods for that reason. Okay. Oh, you're right. This picture. There's your chestnut teal. The best place to see that, of course, is right here in Camp Creek. Do yourself a favour and go and park in your car. The best bird hide you can have is your car. Stay in it with your binoculars, and they'll be there. Quite a few of them. Beautiful things. That's the male on the bottom left. The females on the rocks at the right. There are male and female on the rocks at the right, and there's two sooty oyster catchers with them. Chestnut teal, often marine. You'll see them at the coast. That photo was taken at the sewerage outlet in Somerset.
Oh.
So you can see, just have a look at the female chestnut teal. How it's a plain mottled bird, but it's a sort of a dark brown. And the next picture we'll have is the grey teal, its close relative, which is very similar but paler around the gills, if you like. And the male and female grey teal are the same. The male doesn't have the green head and the colour like a chestnut teal. They come and go in Tassie. They're very nomadic. They've evolved to go where water is. And on the mainland, they're a bird that will travel thousands and thousands of kilometres to shift with the seasons and where the rains are. And they are here in Tassie all the time, but never in great numbers. A much more common bird here is the chestnut teal. It's a close relative. We've got old hardhead. You'd all know this one, would you? Jan, you would have them on your farm. Yes? No? Shaking her head. I can only see you from the glasses down, Jan. Hello.
Sorry. I had trouble earlier with it all. No, we don't have those here. No.
Okay. Anyway, that's a male with the white eye. The female doesn't have the white eye, but they're just a reddish brown bird, and they're a diving duck. They inhabit large, deep, open water and dive for a living. So if you see a duck diving, it'll either be a hardhead or a musk duck, because the others generally don't dive. They're puddle ducks. They have, as you would know, like domestic mallards, have what they call lamellae in their beaks, which is like a sieve, like the baleen in a whale too, and they puddle in the mud and sift out little organisms and spit the mud out the side, the mud and water. Okay. Shell ducks, Australian shell duck, beautiful bird.
Beautiful.
Yeah, fabulous. They're grazers too. They're doing okay with our current farming practices. A few dams around for them and plenty of pasture. Fences are an issue. When the mother duck is taking their young to greener pastures, fences, rabbit-proof netting fences are a hell of a problem for them, and they often get trapped and therefore predated upon. But that picture shows two females and a male. The middle one's the male with no white around at the base of its beak or its eye. The female at the front doesn't have white at the base of the beak. Disregard that. That comes and goes depending on when they last molted. Or there's a little bit of individual variation too. But look, you can't mistake the shell duck. They are just a very large and very conspicuous bird.
Thing, Col, about those is that the young will dive, whereas the parents don't dive. I've seen the parents waiting in the weeds, watching the young diving in the middle of a lake.
Yeah, that's a good point, June. Yeah, in fact, all of the puddle ducks, young ones, will dive. In fact, we had this somewhat traumatic experience when we lived at Somerset with baby black ducks. We had wire netting covering our new turf at the front of the house, and a mother black duck with a great heap of young ones came up on the lawn, and some of the young ones got caught under the netting, and then they tried to come straight up and out, which they couldn't do, of course. One, anyway, we ended up with one stuck there. Reese raced down, collared the duckling, ran out on our jetty. We had built a little jetty, threw it towards the mother and the other young that were swimming away, threw it towards them. It hit the water and just disappeared like a stone. Boom, gone. And we're standing there. Reese turns around to me and says, "I've killed it." And then up the top, and then it ran on the water, flapping its little wings, but it ran on the water to catch up to all the others. It was quite fabulous. But yeah, they'll dive to avoid predators. Okay. Shoveler, Australian shoveler. Who's ever seen one?
I've seen one, but not down here. Yeah.
They're the ugliest ducks, I reckon.
They are here, and we had them in Somerset on our dam.
I haven't seen them in Tas, but I've seen them in Mildura.
You would have done. Yeah, you would have done.
Marvellous bill.
Yeah. Once again, puddle ducks. They got big, highly developed lamellae for sifting through the bottom substrate and separating food from the mud. What can I say? Not that uncommon if you look. Sometimes in a big mob of mixed birds, they're hard to pick out, but that's them. Look fairly ugly, I think, but look, we shouldn't anthropomorphise. Blue-billed ducks. This is another category of ducks altogether, not closely related to all our normal puddle ducks. Diving birds. Divers feed on invertebrates. The male has a bright blue beak and a stiff tail. See how it's got that, well, what's the word? Stiff tail. It's a stiff-tailed duck. Yeah, like quill, with very little barbs on them. And the female is utterly different. In fact, the female looks like a miniature musk duck. So I've seen them, they breed over at the Rubicon, Narrawontapu at times. Is anyone, oh, and I know that Susan Hartley had one on one of her dams up here at Aldina for a while until the domestic geese drove it away. We got rid of the geese. And as far as I know, the blue-billed duck hasn't come back.
Cole, he looks very much like in North America a ruddy duck.
Yep, exactly. Yes, well, good call, Annie. They are related to ruddy. They're stiff-tailed ducks, and there's a few in North America that are related, yes, to our blue-billed duck.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're all diving ducks. They're all sort of deep water ducks. Okay, the musk duck. That's a male with a big pouch under its beak. The female is exactly the same, but without the pouch. A diving duck, you can see very unbuoyant, low freeboard, which facilitates diving, of course. Very large duck, lives on open, deep water, likes large farm dams. Plenty of them around if you've got the right habitat. Well, when I say plenty, I mean there's a pair or two on the odd large dam. Has anyone had those on their farm dam? No.
See them at Narrawontapu. They're quite
and at Wesley Vale. They're there. All right. Black swan. Everyone knows it.
They're white.
Again, a prolific breeder with a big attrition rate among the young. Takes a long time to breed. I think its incubation period is 40 days, which is a damn long time to sit literally as a sitting duck on a nest out in the middle of a swamp. But I guess there's not many predators big enough in Tassie to take them. Wedge-tails, I suppose, sometimes. But anyway, beautiful bird. Iconic Australian bird. This bird's a conservation success story. It was almost shot out of existence. It was critically endangered back in the 50s. And they had a captive breeding program in various parts of Australia and reintroduced it to its old original range and reintroduced it to places where it hadn't been before. And in some places like Three Hummock Island, it's become so successful that it's becoming inbred with a wing defect and can't fly, and nobody's culling them, and it's another one of those stories of upsetting the balance. But anyway, look, it's firmly established now, the Cape Barren goose.
And it's interesting why it was so low in population is it was very good to eat. It was a bird killed by
food, by hunters for food, or by early settlers. And
yeah.
There are lots of them on Maria Island.
Yeah.
And that's another place they weren't before. They were established on Maria as a sanctuary island, but yeah, again overpopulated now.
And so much so that on Flinders Island, up in the Furneaux group, they have an open season now, shooting season, because they're so prolific that they're fouling pastures and eating more than the sheep.
Cole, I think they've gone to Victoria, to Gippsland, and to South Australia too. I think.
Yeah.
They have. They always were in southern Victoria and southeast and South Australia, but they disappeared completely from there back in the 50s. But they got a captive breeding population going from which was collected in the Bass Strait Islands, and they've re-established them everywhere. They're very, very well established now in southeast and South Australia at a place called Bull Lagoon, which is near my home district. They hadn't been seen there for I don't know, probably 100 years, and they're back there now, quite well established.
They're an amazing bird flying. They are incredibly clumsy, and they honk while they're flying. So we always call them flying pigs, because they lumber into each other. They just
You sometimes hear their wings hit together when they're flying in formation. It's a very loose formation, I guess. And their honk is more of a grunt. It's like a guttural sort of a grunt. They're flying pig. Good name. Grebes, dab chicks, the Poms call them. Quite common, particularly the one on the right, the hoary-headed grebe. And look, only an English-speaking nation could come up with a name like a hoary-headed grebe, but that's what it's supposed to look like, hoar frost on the grass on its head. That's in the breeding season. In the non-breeding season, that hoary head disappears, as does the Australian grebe on the left. It loses that red collar, and that white mark at the base of its beak disappears. Very hard to pick which species is which in the non-breeding plumage. But the hoary-headed grebe has a black cap, or a dark brownish black cap, which comes just below the eye, whereas the Australasian grebe, the black cap is through the eye. And if you want to be pedantic enough to check that out, well, that's cool. But it's a bird nerd thing. All right, 4 webbed toes. We talked earlier about the 4 webbed toes. All related, all their species, and all here in northwest Tasmania. What are we going to start with? Little pied cormorant, quite common, never in big mobs, sits around on the rocks here in front of Wynyard. You can pick it from the black-faced cormorant, which I'll go to in a minute, by the fact that the white on its head goes above the eye. See, this is a black-faced cormorant, which is often confused at a distance with the little pied. Take a good look at how the black on its head is, and then go to the little pied. It's quite different, quite much more white on it. And the little pied also has a yellow beak, but you can't always see the yellow beak if it's backlit. It's the old deal of looking at them in the field is not as convenient as looking at them in a book or on the screen. This one is purely a marine bird, whereas the little pied will live in freshwater as well as saltwater. But this bird is only marine, and the nearest breeding colony to here is at the old port here in Wynyard. You would have all seen them out there on that rocky island out, where the old port is?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever been out there to have a look? No. Anyway, best not to go there when they're breeding. Best not to disturb them, but you can look at them with your binoculars or telescope from the car park. They're very convenient, really. Lovely bird, actually, black-faced cormorant. Little black cormorant, very nomadic. Always some in Tassie, but much more common on the mainland. Can move thousands of kilometres following the water and fish, and it will live in freshwater and or saltwater. It's not fussy. Often feeds communally. It'll gang up and work. I've seen them working a school of fish up against a bank, a sand bank, and they'll swim along, herding the fish to where they can't escape, and they'll go in diving for them. And the ones at the back of the mob, once the fish start to run out, will fly forward to the front of the mob and have their turn. So there's a relay of birds slaughtering fish. It's really quite quite something to see. And they will also, this species, somebody said something? No. And this species will also work fish schools in conjunction with pelican. And I don't think the pelicans plan this, but these little fellas are opportunistic. And if pelicans are herding fish, these guys will join in. And because they're much quicker than a pelican, they often beat the pelicans hands down to the fish. We saw that a lot in the Gulf of Carpentaria when we were working there. And if you can see there in that picture, see the colour of its eye? Fabulous.
Blue.
Unusual bluey green. Yeah, like it's something to do, I think, with seeing underwater, but I'm not sure about that. The great cormorant, a worldwide species actually. It lives from Europe right round everywhere there's a suitable habitat. Marine or freshwater. We have a population of those at our old place in Somerset. They roost there, they live there. A very large bird. Can eat a lot of fish. That's the species that the Chinese domesticate and put a ring around their neck so they can't get the fish down, and they use them on a lead to catch fish for them. Australian pelican and Australian gannet. Related birds, believe it or not. Don't need to say much about the pelican. Two only breeding colonies of pelicans in Tassie, very small colonies. One up at Little Swan Island in the northeast, and another one on I think it's Bird Island near Hunter Island in the Hunter group in the northwest. But they only seem to be just hanging on, the pelicans in Tas. I don't know why. The habitat looks right, but they're never common here like they are on the mainland. And the gannet. Now that's a bird that's very well established here in Tassie and has a huge breeding population. The biggest colony is on the Black Pyramid. You'd all be familiar with the Black Pyramid off Cape Grim, would you? It's an old volcano. No? You need to get out more, you guys. If ever you do the Wool North tour of the wind farm, and you're standing on Cape Grim and the weather's half reasonable, which it often isn't, you'll be able to see the Black Pyramid from there. It's about 18 kilometres out. And they also breed on Pedra Branca down in the south of Tassie near Matsyker Island. And I think there's a few on the Mewstone as well. But this bird flies about 40, 50 feet up and dives on fish from a height. Quite spectacular. You would have all seen him on David Attenborough's shows, you know, plunging into the water. Really quite something. And they also breed on the mainland. If ever you're on the mainland, you go to Portland in Victoria, Western Victoria, they breed there at Point Danger on the mainland. They've got the predators fenced out. And the population that was breeding on Lawrence Rocks, which is an island, overflowed the rocks, and they've now moved on to the mainland. One of the few mainland colonies of gannets in the world. There's another one in New Zealand at Cape Kidnappers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Colin, Danny and I went to a colony just away from Dunedin, and what was amazing apart from their diving was that they just lived on the sheer cliff face with, it seemed like small indentations that they went back to as their nest or their home.
Yeah.
So, and with no protection from the wind or the weather, they were just this absolutely steep cliff covered in birds in little indentations.
Yeah, they're incredibly tough birds. And the fact that they can dive from the height that they do, they have a specially developed bone structure in their skull. It has a framework of fine, almost like a coarse foam of bone in its head to withstand the shock of hitting water at some enormous speed, which is what they do, so that they don't end up brain damage, you know, end up punch drunk like a boxer. Yeah, they've developed that over the years. Shorebirds, shore nesters. Sad story about these little fellas because of the amount of human disturbance now. Humans with dogs and vehicles are not breeding very successfully at all. Beautiful birds though. This is the hooded plover. You'd all be familiar with that. And this is an even more familiar wader, resident wader, the red-capped plover. Again, occasionally manages to fledge chicks where humans are, but not often. They're long-lived birds, and you often think that they're doing okay because you always see a few of them on the beach. But some of these adult birds haven't raised any viable chicks for many years, and I guess when the adults die, that'll be the end of them in that region, you know. We've just completed a 10-year study, census of those, and it's not looking good. We need more beaches protected from, you know, keep humans and dogs away. Yeah. You all know these guys. Right here in Wynyard. 2 species of oyster catchers, pied and sooty. I don't need to tell you which is which. The pied oyster catchers, their world stronghold is here in Tassie. They're all over the world in there's slightly different subspecies of them all around the world. But here in Tassie is one of their, well, the main stronghold worldwide for those. Now we're going to go on to migratory birds. I'm going easy, am I?
Good. Well, yeah, you have 40 out of 60. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Migratory flyways, self-explanatory, and the flyway that we deal with is clearly the green one on the right, the East Asian Australasian flyway, and part of it is in Alaska. If you look up on the western side of the map there, Alaska is part of that flyway. So we'll go on to the birds. And this is our largest migratory wader, breeds in Siberia. The eastern curlew, the one on the top left with the big long beak. Getting scarcer every year. There's a few less of them arrive. They're feeding, in other words, refueling grounds in the South China Sea are being developed for ports and fish farms and also harvested. They net, shoot and otherwise kill and eat them on their migration every year in some of those countries. So I think we're seeing the last of some of these species, and which is pretty sad. They're quite spectacular birds. And it's close relative to the right, which the arrow's going around there now, is the whimbrel. And you can see the difference. At first they look, well, they're the same, but the whimbrel has an eyebrow, a supercilium, as you can see, which the curlew doesn't have. And its beak, the whimbrel's beak, is also nowhere near as long or decurved as the eastern curlew. Plus their voices are very different too. But some of you must have seen these in places around here. No? East Inlet's the best place to see them now.
Stanley, yeah.
Stanley, East Inlet.
We might have seen them and not known what they were, Cole.
You what? We
might have seen them but didn't know what they were.
I'm pretty sure you'd clock them if you saw them, because you'd say, hell, that's an unusual bird, because they're quite large.
And the curlew's beak's about as long as its body.
Yeah.
Huge beak. Yeah.
Quite distinctive. And then at the bottom we've got the bar-tailed godwit, another large wader, breeds in Siberia and Alaska and flies down here every year from there. And they come down via the South China. Well, the males come down via the South China Sea and the East Australian flyway, East Asian Australasian flyway. And the females, or some of them at least, fly from Alaska to New Zealand and Australia. And they'll fly from Alaska to New Zealand non-stop across the Pacific. Now, you couldn't make this story up. When they developed geolocators small enough and light enough to glue to the feathers of these birds so that we could track them, science was astounded at the athletic achievements of these birds. They when they get ready for their flight south, their sex organs atrophy, their leg muscles atrophy. They basically shed weight that they don't need and put on muscle and fat, which of course is for fuel. And then so far the world.
Is somebody asking a question? If
there's some interference there. Anyway, so far the world athletic record for any bird on migration is a female bar-tailed godwit that was banded in Alaska and had a geolocator put on it, and it flew non-stop to New Zealand. It was just under 11,000 kilometres in 8 days at an average of 3,000 metres altitude. I mean, seriously, you couldn't make up a story like that. It's just stunning how much or energy these birds require to do that migration. And of course, that's why we need to not disturb them when they land here. They're often emaciated by the time they get here, or New Zealand, or wherever they're going. And the less we disturb them, the better. It takes a lot of energy to take flight. They come here to fuel up to make the flight back to their breeding grounds. And yeah, we need to leave them alone, which isn't happening because of the amount of human activity on beaches.
To go that long without food's extraordinary, but to go that long without fluids, that means they're drunk for 8 days.
It is astounding, isn't it? And they don't take fluids or food, and they sleep. They can shut half of their brain off at a time, so they'll shut one side down and keep flying. And they can't glide either. They have to pump those wings the whole way. You know, 10, 11,000 kilometres. It's just, like I say, it sounds like fantasy land, but we've got these geolocators that proved it. No one could believe it at first. It sounded like a hoax, but it does happen. You've got to admire them. I love this group of birds. And all right, it's a bit of a bird nerd thing. They're all little brown, boring looking birds. But when you learn a little bit about where they fit into the scheme of things and the effort they go to live in a perpetual summer, which is what they do. They do the Australian summer and then the Northern Hemisphere summer. It's just, you have to admire them. So top on the left, redneck stint, very tiny. Probably even smaller than the sparrow, or about sparrow size, I suppose. Very common, mobs of thousands. We get them a lot around Bollinger Bay, Robbins Island, up there in the northwest. A few of them at East Inlet. That's probably the closest you can reliably see them, is East Inlet near Stanley. Just go into where Gulliver's Rest is there and walk a kilometre or two down the beach to the south, and you may see eastern curlews, redneck stints, and a couple of other species if you're lucky. All right, top right is the great knot, and the bottom right is the red knot. Very similar in non-breeding plumage. You've got to remember that these birds all change colour for their breeding season, and when they have changed colour, they are easily identified. But down here, when they're in Australia having time out from breeding, they all look similar. On the left, the common greenshank, which is not that common in Tassie actually, but it's a solitary bird, very wary. You'll have trouble getting close to it. Very distinctive though, a loud piping call, alarm call, and very leggy. Top right, sanderling, and that's in a typical pose there. They live on sandy shores, and they run, follow the wave. As a wave backs out, away down the beach, they'll run after the wave, catching invertebrates and crustacea that are left exposed, and then run like mad back ahead up the beach ahead of the next wave. Quite cool. And that's a grey-tailed tattler down the bottom right. The closest you can reliably see those is at Morelands Point, just east of Devonport. Dying out, less every year. Pacific golden plover, quite common here in the northwest, but getting scarcer each year. There's just less and less of them because of what's happening to their refuelling stops in Southeast Asia. And the grey plover on the right, They look boring, as I said, when they're here, but when they colour up for their breeding time, have a look in your bird book and it'll have a picture of them in breeding plumage, and they're unrecognisable as a rule. Now this one, as a migratory wader, is very different to all the others. It's the only species that migrates east-west rather than north-south. And you can see these right here at the old port. You know that bit of a car park near the old port? There's a bit of a grassy point that's partly gravelled.
Just past Port Creek, just across the creek.
Just across Port Creek. Does everyone know what I mean?
Yep.
It's worth going down and having a look. They're there at the moment. At high tide, if you go down at high tide, they'll be right up in the car park, walking around between the cars.
They don't look anything like plovers.
Pardon?
They don't look anything like plovers, like our musk, lapwings and so on. Their shape seems totally different.
No, but they're related. They're the same. They're the same. They had a common ancestor at some time, you know, way back. Yeah, but they're plovers. There are aspects of these birds that tell you they're plovers. For example, they've got no hind toe. Can't see it here, but there's no hind toe, and their beak is also very much a plover's beak. And they arrive here often with a bit of colour still on them, like the bird in the left picture.
There's still a couple there at the park there that have colour. Two out of the 8. I think we counted 8 there the other day. We just pulled up in the car, didn't get out of the car. They were dead high tide. They were all there right in the car park. Kind of cool. They migrate east-west. They breed in New Zealand, in the high country, mainly in the South Island. And then they fly across the Tasman to do their winter here in eastern Australia and Tasmania. Now, 2 of these are very common here. The Pacific gull, which is that one. Yeah. Not that one. Not that one.
No.
Yeah, that one.
That one. And now go to the kelp gull though. Yeah. Not the 2 of them.
Just this one with it, yeah.
See, there's a difference there. The one on the left is a kelp gull, the one that the arrow's on now. And the one on the right's a Pacific gull. Quite different birds, different voices. Kelp gull still very rare in the northwest here, but much more common down in the southeast of Tasmania. Self-introduced back in the 60s. They arrived here from New Zealand. Well, first of all, they self-introduced themselves to New Zealand, and then from there they spread here to Tasmania and Eastern Australia. The other big fella there with the red and yellow beak is our local Pacific gull. Breeds on islands around here, including Howie Island in the Robbins Passage up in the northwest, where we've been doing a weed eradication project on their colony for 10 years now. We didn't make it this year because of, well, for obvious reasons. And of course, the other one here in the bottom right is our common old silver gull. Everyone calls them seagulls, but their real name's silver gull.
Talk about the juvie.
Yeah, and that juvenile, that brown bird on the bottom left is a juvenile or immature Pacific gull. They take 5 years to reach full colour. They start off very dark and motley, and they get a little bit, a bit lighter each year for 5 years before they reach full result. They develop a white head first. Caspian tern on the left. Another bird you see regularly here in front of Wynyard. The one in the middle at the top is in non-breeding plumage, so its cap isn't as pronounced black, whereas the one bottom left is in breeding plumage. They breed on rocky islands all around Tassie, never in great numbers, but they're a worldwide bird too. They are basically a cosmopolitan bird. And then on the bottom right, we've got the crested tern, which again has a colony that breeds with the black-faced cormorants on that rocky island here at the old port, among others. I mean, it's quite a common bird. In fact, it's the commonest tern that you will see is a crested tern. Small terns. very dainty, delicate little fellas that are under a lot of threat because they're beach nesters rather than on islands. And as before stated, humans and their dogs and vehicles are interfering with their breeding program. The fairy tern at the top left has a sort of a bald forehead, a white forehead. Have you got your arrow? Whereas with the little tern, the black comes forward from the cap and joins the beak. Both those species are here. They both breed on beaches around here if they get the chance. 7 Mile Beach, or what's it called? Anthony's Beach, yeah, among others. But yeah, bird is becoming more and more scarce. We all know this fella, not under any threat, quite a robust bird, breeding everywhere, in spite of dogs killing them from time to time and getting run over by cars. They seem to be holding their own, actually. Very common. Burrows all along the foreshores here. I don't need to talk too much about them, I don't think. You'd all be familiar
No, I'm
with
just
you.
saying, though, that any newcomers to Wynyard really should avail themselves of the ability to see these guys, because they're quite fantastic the way they ignore humans and just come up every night to their burrows.
Yeah, very engaging birds, actually. But look at that shiny, oh, sorry, yeah, the silver feathers. They're totally hydrodynamic, and they have glossy feathers for ease of travel through the water. Very hydrodynamic. Now, albatrosses, more seabirds, and this the albatross here is our common shy albatross, which isn't shy. It's a stupid name. I don't know whoever gave it that name, but they're certainly not shy. They'll come and almost take your hand off if you entice them around your boat with burley. They breed here in Tassie on Albatross Island in Bass Strait, the western side of Bass Strait, and they also breed on the Mewstone down near Mount Syker Island in the deep south. Have been used and abused over the years for feathers, cray bait and general sport, but they're making a comeback, and we were privileged to go to Albatross Island with an abalone diver a few years ago, and that bottom right hand picture was taken by us when we were there in the colony, which is doing just fine, quite majestic. They'd have a wingspan of probably 2.5 metres. And the photo on the bottom left was taken from our boat right here at off the cliffs at Table Cape.
Beautiful photo.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to be there on Albatross Island was just the most amazing experience. It was phenomenal. The birds really, well, the humans are their only predator, but they just don't really show much concern at all. So long as you don't, get right on them, you can stand around and they just go about their business. It was absolutely marvellous.
Just utterly majestic birds.
Cole, is it true that they can only take off when there's a wind from the water?
Yeah, or a clear run. Yes, Jeremy, indeed. In fact, on Albatross Island, right in the middle of their breeding colonies, there's a sinkhole or a big sort of a cave with near vertical sides, and in calm weather, the birds fly across it, and a few of them will stall and end up down in that cave. It's open topped, but they can't.
Like a gulch rather than a cave.
Yeah, so it's a gulch. Yeah, and they can't get out because there's not enough run up. They're like an aircraft. They have to get a run up or a lot of wind to take off. So they end up trapped down there and starve. And when we were there were two of them trapped in there, and Reese and I did a rugby tackle on them and rescued them, and we lugged them up the cliff and launched them back. And they said, "Thank you very much." They spread their wings. It was blowing a bit on the day, and they just opened their wings out and away they went. That's after I got my hand bitten. There was my blood on Reese and on the bird, and plastered everywhere. But it was worth it. Yeah.
Do they only come to breed?
Yes, only
rest
come
of
to
the
land
time
to
they fly
breed.
around.
Yeah, in fact, they don't even come to land for the first couple of years of their life after they fledge. They'll go off, and some species fly right around the world. They just travel on the wing all the time. They don't have to flap hardly ever to fly. They're the perfect gliding machine, and they use the updraft off of waves. In fact, they fly best when it's blowing, and they fly in a series of arcs, dips and arcs. They'll come up the face of a wave, catch the updraft, if you can see my hand, peel off like that, catch the updraft, gain speed on the downdraft enough to go back up again at the next wave, and it's really quite something. So they can fly literally thousands and thousands of miles with minimum effort. And
Ray?
Yeah.
So this is Jen. I thought I'd seen one of those at Smithton at Christmas on the bank of where the river comes in. Would that be true or not?
Unlikely, but not impossible. If it was sick or wounded, it might be there. Well, they're gigantic. They're as big as a goose.
Yeah.
Though.
Oh yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
It was huge.
Oh, I didn't know you had albatrosses round here, so I thought that I was imagining things.
You can see them from Table Cove. If you drove up there now, you'd probably see some.
In fact, Fossil Bluff, you'll see them out there too.
Yeah.
Yep. I've seen
Always at sea, always out at sea a fair way, but take yourself up there with your binoculars, and particularly if it's blowing a bit. They tend to move offshore further when it's calm.
Another place you often see them quite close in is outside the offshore from the Somerset sewerage ponds.
Oh, wow.
Of the extra nutrients there, they'll be catching fish and things.
We counted 70 one day there, 70, feeding on the whatever was attracted to the sewage ponds, I presume.
All the shit.
Yeah, we didn't ask.
I saw one at Christmas 2 years ago flying over Fossil Bluff Beach. Looked like a B-52 bomber.
Yeah, and that species, the size, is not the biggest of them. It's the biggest of the smaller albatrosses, if you like, but there's two species that are even bigger. But we're not going to go into those because they don't breed in Tassie. Yeah, how's our time going? What have we got?
Shift along.
Better crack on, Jane. Sorry. All right, fairy prion on the left picture. Oceanic bird. Breeds though on the carbuncle off Hawley Beach, on Albatross Island, on various little rocky islands all around. There's 50,000 of them breed on Albatross Island alone in Bass Strait.
They're tiny.
And they're tiny. They're smaller than a pigeon, and they come in, they leave and enter their breeding colonies at night to avoid predators. That's why you never see them. But you'll see them beach washed from time to time. I found them at Fossil Bluff as beach wrecks. All right, the middle bird, the white-faced storm petrel. Long legs, it patters on the surface of the sea like St. Peter. About as big as a starling. Looks far too flimsy to be an oceanic bird, but you'll find those, when we went to the Antarctic, those little fellas were just wherever there's ocean, they are. And how the hell they survive those storms down there, I don't know, but they do. A surface feeder though, not a diver. And then bottom right is the common diving petrel. That breeds on little rocky islands around here, the more remote ones anyway. And I love them. They look, when they're on the surface of the sea, they look like a miniature penguin, but they fly with very rapid wing beats, almost buzzing, like a puffin in the Northern Hemisphere, if you've ever seen those. And in rough weather, when you come along in your ship, the boat will disturb them, and I've seen them fly out of a way. They swim underwater with their wings. They don't use their feet so much as their wings. They literally fly underwater. They'll come out of the face of a wave at full bore, like they just emerge like a sea-to-air missile, out of a wave, fly across the trough, and without slowing down at all, just disappear into the back of the next wave. you know, with a little splash as they go. It's quite stunning. I love them.
Wow.
Common old muttonbird, short-tailed shearwater is its real name. The bottom picture is how you normally see them when you're at sea. Dipping, wheeling flight once again. A few rapid wing beats and then a dipping glide. Fabulously tough creatures that fly to the northern hemisphere, to the Bering Sea every year, and then come back to breed in Bass Strait. I forget how many thousand kilometres their migration is. It's huge. They do a big figure of 8. They go from Bass Strait up the east coast of Australia, right on up past Japan, around into the Bering Sea, then back down the western side of North America, and then come direct across the Pacific to Bass Strait again.
They've been severely impacted this last year with climate change, and the breeding's been very unsuccessful. In fact, the hunting of the young has been postponed or cancelled this year in several areas because of the fact that there wasn't enough food for them in the northern hemisphere, so they flew hungry and didn't have the strength to survive then breeding up here.
Their other name is Yolla.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a stupid name for where Yolla is, because would never have been a muttonbird seen.
No muttonbird would have ever been there. All right. Right, vagrants, waterbird vagrants. Occasionally show up. Don't be surprised. The birds, you know, birds haven't read the bird book and they haven't seen the distribution maps. So they will turn up anywhere, anytime, sometime. The one on the left is a Fiordland penguin. Now, I found 5 of these beach washed when I lived in South Australia. I haven't seen one yet in Tassie, but they turn up here, alive or dead. Fabulous bird, absolutely fabulous thing with a bright yellow crest, and it's identifiable. There's a whole series of crested penguins that all look very similar. It's got those white streaks just there on its cheeks. That distinguishes the Fiordland penguin, which breeds in New Zealand, in Fiordland, as it says. And I've been there and seen them in their natural habitat, but they occasionally turn up here. And the one on the right is a royal penguin. They breed on our Macquarie Island in the sub-Antarctic, and sometimes turn up here to molt, just the odd one. Again, among the crested penguins, distinguished easily by the white face, the pale face. They all have yellow crests. They all have big, heavy beaks, but the royal is the only one with a pale face. If ever you see one, for Christ's sake, ring me up and let me know. I'll be down like a blue streak. Oh, king penguins. Another bird that turns up here very occasionally in Tassie to molt, or young birds that get disoriented and get lost. You can see them. I got them on my shirt. But when I was in the Antarctic, I got this shirt in Tierra del Fuego. Fantastic birds. To stand in a colony of these, of 200,000 of these things, all trumpeting, is just one of those wonderful bird experiences that everyone should have if you're interested in birds.
Cole, what is the trumpeting? What does that signify?
What is what?
What does the trumpeting signify?
Oh, it's to identify their mates. They can recognise their partner's voice.
Oh.
Yeah, even in that throng, and they can and the parents can recognise their chick's voice. Believe it or not, it just seems unbelievable, but that's how they locate each other. Because when a parent comes back from feeding at sea, and these things can dive to 600 or 700 feet depth. I mean, they're seriously aquatic birds. They'll turn up on the shore at the colony where there's this enormous number of birds all yelling their heads off.
Darling, I'm home.
Yeah, that's right. And you'll see the chick recognise the parent, and it'll be bustling its way, these fat, brown, round things like fluffy footballs, barging its way through other parents to get to its own parent and get a feed, and the parent regurgitates a hot meal for them. And this is not a water bird, but it's a very aquatic bird. And this is another vagrant that Michael Hyland, good old Michael, lighthouse keeper extraordinaire, he photographed one of these at that little dam near the lighthouse here on Table Cape. Very common coastal bird on the mainland, but for some reason doesn't live in Tassie. The habitat here is fine. Just one of those birds, common birds that's never established. They live worldwide. They have a worldwide distribution, the osprey. There's various subspecies here, from here to there. But anyway, that's a bird. Don't think you're seeing things if you see one. It can happen. Pink-eared duck. Now, there was a mob of 22, I think it was, 22 of these down at the Smithton Sewerage Works a while back. Pink-eared duck, very common on the inland, in the inland part of the mainland. Another dabbling duck, as you can see by the highly adapted bill with flexible flaps on the side of it. Called a pink-eared duck for obvious reasons. It's got a very bright, almost fluoro pink spot near its ear. Another common name for them is zebra duck, which is a more fitting name. You can see the stripes or the barring in the wild, but not the pink ear. But yeah, look, I guess driven to Tasmania by the drought on the mainland. Can show up here. Terrex sandpiper, another scarce one in Tassie, only turns up as a vagrant. Fabulous, but I love them. They feed by running and surprising their prey. There might be crabs that come out of their burrow when the tide's out. You know, they feed on the sand flats, and they will run at blinding speed and snaffle any crab or worm that can't get back down its burrow quickly enough. Easily distinguished by the yellow legs and the noticeably upturned beak. And about as big as a starling or a bit bigger. In the bottom right is a white-winged black tern. Fabulous bird. And just to keep you confused, they don't look like that in the non-breeding season. They're all more or less grey and white. But that's another bird, again, that doesn't belong here but can turn up here. That's it. I think I'm done. But I'm open to questions, stories, anecdotes. I'm interested. Hit me with your birding experiences.
Anybody got any questions?
Don't all talk at once. Fjordland.
Stuck for words, yeah. I'm overwhelmed.
You're overwhelmed. I think that's more to the point.
And that ain't half of it. I could go on and on, but I won't.
Oh, I haven't got a question, but I want to give some feedback. What has just been so terrific about these 2 weeks is the way that you treat us all as if we're going to be serious birders. And it's not just pretty pictures of birds. It's been really educational and encouraging us to be serious about getting out there and doing some real looking.
That's cool. Well, that's good. And I hope you do. And you don't have to become a total nerdy, pedantic, bloody birder. You know, I don't think I am. I mean, no, seriously, you don't know. If you're laughing now, it's because you don't know any real birders, mate. No.
Real birders talk about nothing else except ever.
How sad.
Ever. But look, and it's like any subject. The more you know about it, the more there is to see and do. But the whole thing too about birds is they're part of our habitat, and you need to look. It's like you can't be interested in birds without being to some extent interested in botany, because they go together.
Yeah.
You can't be interested in fishing if and not take an interest in seabirds. You know, it's. There's a whole heap of these things go together, and I love it. I think we need to look at it. It's amazing what's out there if you look, is what I always say to people.
Sure.
Well, that was brilliant. It's Annie here, Cole. Thank you. And what I love is your enthusiasm, but your modesty also about your incredible knowledge.